Hello, everybody. Good. That means the audio is working.
Hello.
We got a few more minutes before people come in.
No worries. Um, while you're here, TJ,
Sure.
with when are the chem details coming out?
Oh, I spoke to Damien. He basically had everything finished. He's sending it through to
Mm-hmm.
me,
Mm-hmm.
and then we're sending it out probably early next week.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. We'll
Just
try to do it maybe even tomorrow. But
okay, no worries.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Uh,
you.
if you need if you need the dates are confirmed. They are the
Mm-hmm.
12th of December
Mm-hmm.
until that Sunday, which would then be the
Yeah.
14th.
Okay. Do you
And
know do you know if it's is it a tent kind of camping or is it an indoor thing or
no, I mean it's a tent kind of camping. So we've
right,
got
okay.
we've got like big tents, like about 6 kids to a tent. We'll
Right,
have
okay.
separate ones for the boys and girls and
Right.
so on.
Okay.
If the weather is really bad, we have
Mm-hmm.
options to we have these special cabins that they can use.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. So the very first time we went, we had like the craziest rainstorm ever.
Oh my.
um, and it was interesting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so ever since we get these, they have these little container cabins like next door, and we get a few. So if it
I see.
rains, they go in
Yeah.
there. It's a little bit more like sardines in a can kind of thing, but I think that'll be
Mm-hmm.
better than drifting away.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just asking because it will be Luca's first time away from us, so I'm a little bit
Okay.
concerned.
So it's a good question
Yeah.
to ask. Like we've had a few kids with homesickness, and it's in
Mm-hmm.
Rabang, so it's quite
Mm-hmm.
close to the
Mm-hmm.
actual school.
Mm-hmm.
So up until 10 o'clock, the kids can be picked up and then dropped off the next day. So particularly for the
Right.
for the little ones, it's
Because Luca's the
pretty.
youngest. Yeah, he's the
y-
youngest in the
Probably not.
program.
Yeah, in the program he is, but
Mm-hmm.
there is some younger kids that potentially will be there. To be honest, like
Oh,
I've
I see. Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
So it's not just help. I also have kids from Sri KDU as well as
Ah,
from all
right.
kinds of other kids from my
I
private classes.
see.
Yeah,
Okay, all right. So it's a combo thing for everything.
yeah, which is a lot of fun.
Right. Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, that makes sense now.
yeah,
Okay. Okay. All
yeah.
right.
And
Yeah.
we do it every half year. And
Mm-hmm.
basically the idea being that the older teens make some of the curriculum stuff, like some of the
Mm-hmm.
STEM things, and they get to design it and then get the
Mm-hmm.
stuff ready for it, and they also run the
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and then we're the ones sort of facilitating that,
Ah,
make sure it's all safe and
right.
so on.
Okay.
So yeah, we've got older like the 16-year-olds, and so
Right.
it's a lot of fun.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. All right. That makes sense.
yeah,
That sounds fun.
yeah.
Yeah, I
No, no,
think.
no parents,
Yeah, I know.
except
I
me.
I don't really want to be there, but it's just that I wanted to just highlight that it will be his first
Yeah.
time away from us, and it's gonna be his birthday.
Oh, nice. Well, I have to
Yeah.
get some
So
cake.
yeah, so I'm a bit like, oh, this is the first time that I won't be spending birthday with him.
Oh, well,
So
we can
yeah,
do it.
so
We
it's
can do a
gonna be
call.
so it's
We can
gonna
do
so
a
it's gonna
call.
be like, oh my God, what am I gonna do at home?
Yeah, they grow up so fast, don't they?
I
The
know.
it's the good thing is though that we will be like particularly the ones a little bit homesick. And we
Yeah.
don't know if he is, of course. It will be his first camp.
Mm, mm,
We will normally like monitor it a bit, and then if need
mm-hmm.
be, we will call the parents and they can come and pick them up.
Yeah, no,
And
he'll be
but
fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like we had one boy who was so homesick. Like the first night,
Mm,
he was picked up, and
mm-hmm.
it was kind of cute because he was walking around at the campsite,
Yeah.
and the next day, and then the
Yeah.
kids were talking about all the stuff they did, and he was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, what did you do?" And then one of the girls was like, "Well, you could have just stayed." And there's just a girl about his age, and then the next
Oh.
night he was like, "I want to try to stay," and he stayed the whole night, which was really good.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
That's great. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, he'll be fine because I just don't need to just remind him that there is, as long as there's a lot of people around him, I think he'll
Hmm.
be fine. It's
Yes,
just that
yeah.
I just wanted to highlight that it will be his first time away from us, that's all.
That's no problem. He won't be the
And it
only one, to
happened
be
to be
honest.
his birthday as well, so he needs to
Okay.
be Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a quick note of that and then send that to
Yeah.
Damien because
Yeah.
he's doing some of the curriculum stuff, and then
Yeah.
I'll ask him to we'll do something fun around that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that will really make him very happy.
yeah, and then this, I mean, the Sunday itself, right? Like,
Yeah.
because is let me see, because it's Miss Fatiha's birthday as well, actually, that weekend,
Oh, well, there you
which
go.
yeah, so that will be fun. Um,
Yeah.
what we can do is we can maybe surprise them on Sunday because you'll all be there as parents for the
Yep.
camp,
Mhm.
and the kids will be cooking. So
Mhm.
like maybe we can bring a little bit of birthday cake thingy there or
Yeah,
something.
I'm happy to bring one, but his birthday is on a Saturday night, Saturday.
Okay, okay, sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So I mean, we could do a delayed big birthday party then if that works.
Yeah.
We'll do one on the day itself. We'll sing around the
Yep.
campfire,
Mm.
but then on the we can have like a little. I mean, we won't have an oven unless the
Yeah.
teens decide to build one. Not holding that against them if they would.
Okay, that sounds fun now. Okay, I
Yes,
just
yeah, yeah,
wanted to make sure that yeah, that we've got our
good.
eyes ready and all that. Is it in okay, no, I'll wait for the details and I'll ask questions later.
Yeah, no, I mean it's
Yeah.
okay. We're still waiting for some people. So it's basically it's called Taman Rimba Commonwealth, which is like 20 minutes from Help.
Oh, okay.
So it's really close.
Mhm.
It's super nice campsite, and it's owned by this Datin that basically made it to help schools. So
Okay.
if you as a school book it, they'll sort of close it off for other campers
Okay. Great.
if the group is
Right.
big enough, and we're big enough now, so
Okay.
that's nice.
Mm. Okay, that's
Yeah.
good. How many kids are you expecting?
Well, if everybody comes, it can go up to 80 kids. It's pretty big. Uh,
Really?
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So
Wow, that's a lot.
yeah, yeah. So we had 40 last camp.
Wow.
Yeah. So like, there's yeah, very exciting
Wow.
stuff.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
yeah. But
You guys
I've
would need a lot of help.
yeah, well, I mean, we have for every 10 students, we have one adult.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a bunch of the teens that like the older teens, like the ones
Mm-hmm.
in A levels and so on,
Mm-hmm.
they become facilitators. So
Mm-mm.
they're
Oh,
so
okay. Yeah.
yeah, so basically that makes it like out of the six so out of the potentially 80, there'll be like 15 or something that are like
Right.
between 16, 17.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, like that, like obviously me, myself, Damien, my wife Kelly will be there.
Mm-hmm.
And we are first aid trained as well, so
Yeah.
that's the important ones. Like
Yeah.
there's always
Yeah.
lots of cuts and scrapes.
Oh,
So
yeah, definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we love
okay,
camping.
yes,
Thank
yeah, no,
you.
me too, me too. It's fun. um,
Thanks, CJ.
Okay, no problem. Okay, well, welcome everybody. I see a lot of people in the room. That's nice. There might be some more people coming in later, which is all fine. I'm gonna try to take actually some like some writing and stuff, like new technology to note some stuff and draw some things, which I hope will be a nice experience. If you want to have any questions, you can either put them in chat or you can like I have a few people that asked questions in the actual questionnaire. And then we had a poll about a few questions that who wants to ask. So there were a lot of similar questions in the actual document. So I thought it would be nice to sort of get a poll, and then we'll work through the other questions in that poll one at a time at some point as well. But yeah, just type in the chat if you need to. Raise your hand if you want to ask. I want to make this a very interactive kind of thing. And just share a bit of the knowledge that I've built in the last almost 6 years now. So I mean, you all know who I am because if you're here, you're enrolled with our programs. And basically, what I really want to do is I want to not just focus on the children. Like one of the biggest things in gifted education, a very important scholar called Renzulli, who was one of the very early scholars on giftedness. He both was really important in defining giftedness in a bit more holistic way. But he also had like a model that said there's a few important parts, and the important parts were basically, and he named it the triangle of giftedness. And basically, what we would look at is three things, and that would be things at home. So the home situation is very important. The school situation is very important. And then the student itself is important. So all three have to really work together to sort of help gifted kids shine. And obviously, Help is a great school. My kids go there myself, which I'm very happy that they can accommodate them. And I have a lot of friends in Sri KDU as well. So they're both like great schools for the parents that are here from Sri KDU. Basically, school and students we focus on, but the at-home situation can sometimes be a little bit lacking. So I've really decided that, like, not only want to do these Q&As, I also want to invite you guys very soon for a 2-hour positive discipline course. And that course is one that we've been doing in the Netherlands for a long time. When we do it in the Netherlands, we charge almost 600 euros for it for 3 sessions. And you as parents are going to get access to that completely free of charge, because I think it's such an important course that I'd love to share it with you. And there will be a poll going out next week, because we got a few more people potentially signing up to find out what is the first session we can run. This will be a face-to-face session. We'll either do it in my center in PJ, or we'll find a little bit bigger space to do this. And we'll be able to do role plays and things like that. The only caveat is that if there is a couple, so if you are if you're together with your husband or wife, both parents have to be there. That's important. Right, so we're gonna try and get the hubbies on board, as we say in Malaysia. But it's and that's why I want to give enough leeway, and it will be at night, so no kids allowed either. So yeah, so that's the home situation, and the questions that we have today are actually around that as well, because one of the questions that we had is like, so if they know how to do their homework, how come they're still not doing this? And I think it might be important, like before I start diving into that actual question, on like what is giftedness first, right? So the definition of giftedness is kind of broad, but I define it as somebody with really advanced ability in one or more fields, potentially being able to learn or master that skill faster than about 90 to 95% of the population. And often very creative, definitely neurodivergent person, so their brains tend to be quite different. And unfortunately, suffer a little bit from asynchronous development on occasions. And that asynchronous development is actually where we're going to see a little bit of a challenge in why they struggle with homework at home. So another thing that is very key is that gifted minds, and we know this from Lieberman's work. He's a professor at MIT. That gifted minds have more neural connectors, which means they process things faster, but they also suffer from more intense feelings as a result. And that can be both a good or a bad thing, of course. So we often call that as over-excitabilities or sensitivities, overthinking things. And then the logical, strong part of their brain is also very good at thinking of lots of doom scenarios, particularly when it comes to doing hard work. And that, of course, makes things difficult for them to sometimes commit to tasks and then complete them. And that's essentially what homework is really for. So Lieberman basically talks a lot about dopamine. And the dopamine is basically the thing that makes us do stuff. So dopamine is essentially everything that happens in your brain, and when you do a task, it releases dopamine. When you complete a task, it releases dopamine, and that entire dopamine cycle helps us basically survive. That's how we've grown as species. Any animal does this. What makes us a little bit unique is that we as humans can do something which is called delayed gratification. So delayed gratification is really important in all of this, because one of the things that our brain wants, it is kind of lazy, and the way that the different parts of our brains function together, particularly around dopamine, is that when you see dopamine being released for something, there's a little bit of I'm learning, oh, this is something I like to do. If the task is very easy to do, your brain will go, great, let's do more of this. And this is how you build habits, right? Now, where this has become a problem, because when we are trying to get dopamine, and if our working memory is basically a kind of a simple computer that doesn't logically think or emotionally think, it's just basically deciding, like a calculator, whether whatever you're doing right now is going to get you enough dopamine to reward the effort you're putting in. So am I going to get more dopamine than the effort? Then obviously I'm progressing in terms of my survival. I mean, if I'm hunting for something that is impossible to catch, then there's no point continuing, because if I keep doing that forever, I'll die of hunger. And if and there's lots of other things, like making, like in the old days when we used to make tools like arrowheads and you name it, obviously making an arrowhead doesn't immediately give you some of your basic needs. But when you make arrowheads, you can catch food better. And when you learn, like, oh, but this little bit of effort of making an arrowhead, I can catch food much more easy, therefore it's worth it. And basically, the brain is constantly making a value judgment whether the activity being done right now is worth the effort. And the irony is that, like, if the thing is too easy, so the whatever you're doing is so easy that the reward for it is also completely irrelevant, the brain goes, that is pointless. Okay. But if we do something that's very hard that we think we can't do, then we get into a situation where the brain says, this is too hard, we can't do it either. So and there's a theory particularly that we use for this called flow that is very important in this. So if I take flow, for example, and I'll draw a little line here. Maybe can I see some hands? Who's ever heard of flow before? Deafening silence in all these meetings, as always, which is absolutely fine. So I'll draw a little line here. So first of all, when we talk about flow, we have the basically the effort you're exerting to do a task on the bottom, and you have the challenge on the top that it takes to complete it. Now, in a perfect world, what would happen is the effort a task takes to complete it matches the challenge perfectly. That would be the ideal line. But unfortunately, the world is not really perfect. So generally speaking, our brain sort of accepts some effort that is slightly below the maximum reward, and it will also accept effort slightly above. There we go. And anything inside this little box is effort that we feel is worth the challenge and worth the dopamine that we're going to get, right? And anybody working and operating inside of this box is in what we call a flow state. So flow state is very interesting. The actual scientist that coined this, and I'm going to butcher his name, Krasnizal. I'm sorry about that. I'll share this in the chat. He basically said, like, we observe flow when people do a task that is slightly out of reach and is within their ability to learn on the spot, to the point that they become a little bit more an expert in it, and then continue the task and then have an opportunity to actually increase the difficulty of this task. So he's using the analogy of climbing a mountain to really help with this. And the way that he does this, he says, like, well, if you start climbing in the beginning, it tends to be relatively easy. You're not yet tired. You're not really scared yet. And you can go up a little bit. And as you go higher and higher, things get a little bit harder. But if you practice and do things well, and you don't go above your means, you can get into a state where almost the entire world sort of disappears. And I'm sure some of you have been in a situation where you were doing some work, and it really felt like, oh, I completely forgot where I am. Things feel nice. And when we work with the kids, what we're trying to do is we're trying to set tasks that are slightly above that ideal line, so that we have to push them to learn new things. And then things tend to get a little bit harder, but as they get better, things go down. And as they reach the point where things become too easy, we have to be careful, because anything below this line, we face boredom, right? So boredom particularly is obviously not great. And a lot of our gifted kids, when they're in school, they sit in this state. So what is happening is the amount of effort they're putting in is almost nothing that they have to put in, but the challenge is also not there. There's a disconnect between effort and challenge. Anything above this line is anxious. So this is where we feel a state of fear, essentially. I mean, we recognize the word anxious as a fear state. What a lot of people don't realize is that boredom is also a fear state. So whenever we don't get dopamine, our brain thinks we're not going to survive. That's not good. That's scary. So the emotion fear gets triggered, which then creates a fight or flight response with the actual task that is happening. And like obviously we see a lot of gifted kids here, but we also see them in these anxious regions because often because they don't have to put a lot of effort in for items, they don't really get good at practicing things, and things that are sometimes easier for us or for their peers all of a sudden become very hard. So that's why we see a lot of perfectionism traits and the fear of failure in young gifted kids, because they're kind of extreme. And then when they feel a little bit of boredom, because they're gifted, they feel it more intensely. When they feel anxious because they're not really getting what they want, they feel it more intensely. So their fight or flight responses are a lot more intense. So they go back and forth and back and forth. And this happens throughout their entire development. So as an educator, what you're trying to do is you're trying to basically, every time they're almost at this boredom, we introduce a new challenge, and then we give them time to practice. And if you do this properly, they're always within this flow state. Now, there is another state that I always tell my kids that is really important to try and avoid, and that's the line above here. This one is a little bit nasty because I've heard this term float around on the internet a lot. A lot of internet gurus, they'll go like, oh, you have to get into hyperfocus. And hyperfocus looks like flow, but it's not the same. So hyperfocus is when you are so focused on a task that you cannot stop, and you're basically giving it your all at the expense of almost anything else. And the big difference is, though, somebody in hyperfocus is actually scared. So hyperfocus tends to happen when you've been letting things go, and all of a sudden there's a deadline, and all of a sudden you have to do something. And that is normally when you see the kids really start working really hard, and they say, "Okay, let's let's get going," and they'll work like they'll study for 6-7 hours in a row. The problem is if you're in an anxious state when you're doing your work, you don't feel nice. Like you're definitely not enjoying the process. You're really stressed. And whenever we are stressed, the stress hormones that we release, essentially the fear hormones and all these things, they reduce our cognitive ability. So not only are we like building up resentment and frustration, we are also making our actual output worse. So hyperfocus is not good. Like almost everybody here that has done like last minute revision when you were studying knows that you didn't do as well as when you were just doing it before. So almost everything that we do, particularly with the secondary students, is towards getting the children to learn how to discover and act on their flow states. And that means we basically have to teach them first to recognize, well, okay, I am procrastinating, because most of the time when they've reached boredom or anxiousness and they're not in hyperfocus, they are doing something to deal with that fear. And these kind of responses are really strong. Like it's amazing how unconscious the behaviors of some of these kids are. And we used to tell them, you know what, if you're bored and you're not doing anything, you're just lazy. And that is categorically just not true, right? Because somebody that is scared that does something different is not lazy. Right? And one other reason why this is very important is because you're telling somebody you are lazy, you're a lazy person, which is a character statement about who they are, which means if you internalize that, like you basically go, well, I'm lazy, I can't do anything about it, I'm just a lazy person. But the difference is I am a scared person is like, okay, well, if I'm scared of something, then either I can remove the trigger and I'm no longer scared, or I can learn to become brave. Like being brave is not the absence of fear, it's being able to do something despite of it. And when in psychology, when you try and deal with fear, so this is definitely not what that is. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about fear. How do you get over fear? Well, fear is basically what we do in psychology is we do exposure therapy, right? Because exposure therapy is all about trying to get you used to the fear trigger. And this is why you practice, and why when you're a firefighter, they make them run into semi-burning buildings. So simply to learn how to overcome your fear responses. Like a lot of our, as I said, like our first aiders go through that kind of training just to prevent it. And they're trying to simulate it in a way that is as close as possible to the real thing. So if you bring that back to where we were, like the real question that you need to ask first, like, okay, so they know how to do their homework, and that might be true. But realistically, though, like, do they really know, like, why they are procrastinating? That's the first question you need to ask. So, as a parent, when you see them not do things, a tendency to be like, okay, you have to do this, and you have more experience, so you can see the delayed gratification a lot more. But a lot of the delayed gratification that we expect to be obvious for them isn't obvious for them. If you're 5 years old, what does a university mean? It doesn't mean much. It's like, oh, if you don't study, you won't get a good job. And most of them go like, yeah, well, what does that mean? So it is really unfair to judge their ability to commit to a task or not, that they're either bored with or that they're scared of to do because they're anxious. Well, again, they're scared in both ways. To say, oh, well, like, look, you should just listen to me because I know better. And the problem is this dopamine cycle is chemical. It's nothing to do with the logic part. Most of the teens in A levels that I work with, they get this logically. You tell them this, they get it. Oh, great. But then you actually give them a task to do, and they still get stuck. Right? So just explaining this is a great way for us as parents to create empathy and really figure out, like, okay, what can we do? But honestly, just telling them this and then leaving it at that is just not how this works. And this is where exposure therapy comes in. So for those who don't know what exposure therapy is, like basically, if you're scared of spiders, right? There we go. And I happened to run into a lady in my parking lot the other day, and I was talking about the same thing. And I said, okay, what is exposure therapy? And she has like arachnophobia. And the moment I told her, like, if I need to help people with arachnophobia, what I would need to do is I would need to tell them to go into a room with a spider that is in a glass jar with a cloth over it on a table somewhere. And I just want you to choose to go towards that room. And this was a fictional room because I don't have a spider in a jar anywhere. And her physical reaction was immense. She told me, like, look, just thinking of this makes me scared to my core. And I said, and that's the kind of the point, right? Like, so what you do is you challenge them. And the difference is this: if I take somebody with that fear and I'm just going to say, all right, I pick you up and I throw you into a room with spiders, then you're creating PTSD. What happens is they get so scared, like you really are not going to get what you want. Sometimes they stay long enough, they will stop being completely scared of spiders, but the whole trauma of the experience is definitely not going to make them a happier person. So what you need to do exposure therapy is agency. And basically, this is a very core principle of almost everything that gifted kids really, really need. Right? So agency and giving them choice, and this is why we have to pull out, and why it's so important that even if they choose sometimes a subject that is maybe a core subject, or that is maybe a subject that they're struggling in a little bit, or that you as a parent deem quite important, is that if you don't give them the agency, and you tell them just deal with it, what you're doing is you're pushing them into a room with a spider when they're scared of it. Now, that's not fair. right? So what we need to do is we need to ask them, okay, like, when are you ready to commit to trying this thing? Like, so we need to have little bits, little steps, because when you have this spider in a glass jar with a top on it, with a cover over it, and it's in a room, and you walk in, eventually that person will be able to walk into that room. Maybe a second first, maybe 10 seconds the next time, and so on. And you keep doing this until they're comfortable staying in the room with the cloth over the spider contraption. And then once that is like, okay, I can stay here, I'm no longer scared, we lift the cloth. You can now see the spider, and we start again. And basically, you keep doing this until basically somebody could potentially hold a spider. Now, whether like spending so much time like trying to get around arachnophobia, whether that's worth it, let's have a different kind of, that's a different conversation. But like, it's very obvious to understand that, like, if we look at them not doing their homework as a fear response, and we want them to start doing it, pushing them in is not the right way to do this. So what do we do? Like, how do we help them? Now, first of all, for all the kids enrolled with us, everything we do when it comes to the board games that we play, for example, is designed to create a faster loop of this anxious boredom cycle. And the reason we use board games is because they're so conditioned by homework very often that the moment you bring the homework out, they go into this fight or flight mode. It's like the same reaction this poor lady had when I just talked about a spider in a jar. And there's maybe fears that you have in the same way. So that's the thing. Like, we cannot use the actual homework sometimes immediately to do this. So what we do is we give them these board games, and these board games start super fun, and they are interesting, and they seem to be, quite nice. Like, learning new things, like games, computer games are really good at this as well, by the way. They sort of like toe that line of being the right kind of effort for the right kind of challenge, and often give really quick obvious rewards, like, because that's the other key to this puzzle. Like, sometimes the homework is kind of disconnected from anything meaningful. It doesn't feel like it's very useful, and we know that it's important for the long term, and you as parents know this too, but that it doesn't feel like this. So we need to help them with that, and the board games do this, and then the board games become a little bit too easy, and then we tell them, all right, let's increase the difficulty. Now, a lot of gifted kids will start skipping. So if you guys have seen my reports with you, there'll be like a bit in there that says they skip levels. Now, whenever they're skipping levels for board games like this, it means that they have already figured out that there's a way to deal with that boredom. So it's a massive indicator for me that they have avoidance behavior. Now, how do we help them with that? Well, what is one way to make a boring task more fun? And a very simple way of doing that is taking an analogy of running across a field. If I ask any of you to sort of go and run across the field, or walk across the field first, to be honest, it's like, okay, anybody could do that. But it's all not very entertaining. So if I ask you, how about run across the field? It gets a little bit more interesting. But if I say, okay, try to run the fastest you can, try to beat your personal best. Now, all of a sudden, things change. You have to think about, maybe I need to wear better shoes. Maybe I need to make sure I haven't eaten something so I don't have a full stomach, but I need to be hydrated. There's lots of things that you need to do to make sure that you're basically being able to complete this task. And when you set the right kind of goal, like speed things up, then things become interesting, right? So even something that is in his boredom territory over here will go into more of the flow territory if you do this right. So that's the first thing we do. We teach them how to set goals, which honestly is really, really hard. It takes them sometimes it takes them years to do this right. And I'll be honest, the majority of the adults I work with still don't know how to do this properly. For any of you who are managing many staff, know that this is hard. You need practice to know how long a task takes. And we're introducing new things to them all the time. So we're asking them to, manage this boredom by setting right goals. But at the same time, we're constantly making them do new things. So they have no clue how much time it takes, which means that they're constantly shooting into this anxious territory at the same time. Right. So now the board games are mathematically made. So when they start playing them, eventually the board games become increasingly more difficult. They become exponentially more difficult because of the way that they're built. And then they have to deal with the anxious bit, where it's like, oh, I might not be able to even complete a single level in a single session. And that happens with some of our games. So we have games that some kids take 3 lessons before they can complete a single level. And that takes a whole different kind of grit to not give up. And it requires creative thinking about how to keep track on what kind of solutions you've tried and so forth. And when they get into that territory, we have to help them with that, so that when they do things that is hard, they start to rethink how to break things down into smaller bits, how to logically think about what is the most impactful part of the actual work that they have to do. And then finally, it's like how to enjoy that process, because doing things that like are, if you're playing a game like this that has no real life application, and you're going to do that for 3 days, 3 weeks in a row, oh, you have to have some real grit. Right, so this is where a lot of coaching, a lot of positive reinforcement, and a lot of neurolinguistic programming from us happens to basically help them commit to that task. And that happens basically every session. But we use whatever they learn directly in the games that they play in the same way when they are playing or actually doing projects. Right, so these projects that they do, and I know we do loads of them, and we will tie them into a lot of their curriculum. But what we're doing is we're speeding those up quite a bit. We start relatively slow. We give them a lot of agency, because if they choose something that they really like, right, so they really go, okay, I like this, and I'm going to try my best. And this is the fun part of working with gifted kids. Like sometimes it feels like we can't fully trust them, but like really agency here. You'll be surprised how much they actually want. A huge chunk of them really want that choice, and they will choose things that is above and beyond what you expect from them, right? So the reason that they often struggle with it is because they feel, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit bored, I can't do this, or I'm a little bit anxious, right? So like I'm still in this same area here that basically is really really important to say. But in order for us to get them to this happy state, like really the area where we say, okay, what's going on, the most important part is actually autonomy. So being able to be in control, and that's a really important marker. So can I have the agency to choose what I want to engage with, particularly in terms of responsibility, and can I have the positive impact on it that I want? Now, we're all parents here. Like that means at some point you weren't a parent and one of your children was born. And when that happened, you were the most happy in your life because you actually got responsibility. Now, it was scary too, I'm sure. But at the same time, I truly think that, and that's a lot of my own research that I've been doing for the university I was working with, was basically around happiness and what does that really mean. And that obviously means you need to have a physical health that is okay. Your mental health needs to be okay, which is again why we don't throw them in front of the lions. But at the same time, we also want to make sure that they have responsibility. And this is a big thing. Responsibility is not a responsibility until you've accepted it. Right? So if you are an employer and you have people working for you and you just walk by and you just tell someone, hey, can you just do this? And they haven't actually physically said, yes, that's true. And you've never told them that's one of the original things. Like even in HR, you can't legally tell them that was their responsibility at all. Like legally, that's not true. But even ethically, that's not right. But yet we do it a lot with our kids. So we tell them, you have to do this, you have to do this. And we don't give them the option to actually say, yes, I want to do this. And a little bit of that is worry or sometimes mistrust that they might not make the right decision. And that's true. Now, but if you give them some, how to say, some trust, like really give them some trust, they will surprise you. Now, the flip side of that is that once they commit, once they say, I'm going to do this, then you have to be firm, because now they've taken responsibility for something. And you can't get rid of responsibility by letting it go. That's being irresponsible. So once they commit, they say, okay, here's the choices, everything else. I'm going to do this. Then you say, okay, great. Now do it. Now figure it out. And if they don't know how to do it, they're in this anxious territory. We again have to help them. And then we have to basically keep encouraging them, keep encouraging them. And this is why our projects are done into little small bits. Every project that we start with our gifted and talented groups, the very first one goes off the rails. I've not had a single one, and there's a few students in my in my group that have been on the 13A star list and everything else, but all of them have failed their first project. And it's because they don't know how to make the value judgment of what is something that they're capable of if they get all that freedom and all that agency. Right. But if you do this right, they will decide, okay, I want to do this, and there we go. So now how do we use this at home? Right. So what can you do? Now you need to basically, I mean, we're working on this with them every time we see them. With the little ones, it's not as on the nose. We do it sort of more through play and all kinds of things that sort of create these right kind of behaviors. And honestly, normal school tends to make these behaviors happen as well. It's just that for gifted kids, normal school often doesn't give them the right challenge. So they never really run into the anxious territory, and they're very often in the boredom territory. And if they're in boredom territory, they build up habits, and then they become master procrastinators, in a sense. And that's why we need to help them. But when we actually get them to understand this and they work on it, then what can you do at home? Well, first of all, when you see them procrastinate, the thing you can do is you can actually ask them what's going on. So don't judge. Ask them, hey, I see you walking around. Like, are you okay? Is it hard to do the task? Which is very different than, are you being lazy again? So you're basically asking them to reflect. So that's the first thing. Like, your goal is to try and get them to self-reflect. And the closer you can do that towards the original trigger, the better it is, because they'll be able to identify, oh, what's causing this? So if they're then committing to that particular task and they can't do it, then you ask them, okay, what's going on? Is it too easy or is it too hard? And this is where it's a coaching thing. Like, if they trust you, and they don't know, they'll say, hey, actually, let's work it out. Like this is what I think, and then you can have a good discussion about it. And that's great, because that really allows them to build up a more positive memory about the fearful trigger. And that's how you build resilience against this fear. So help them reflect. That's a really important part, because this is where we're actually getting to the autonomous part. So we first of all, we help reflect. Okay? So then, once they've done that, help them set a goal. Right? So if there's either one of two options, so either we have they're bored, or it's too hard. Which one of the two is it? One requires set goal, right? And they should know this by now. So just you helping them, remind them, should make that work. And that should get them going again. The other thing that they can do, if it's hard, then it's like, okay, like, take notes, or watch videos, or read the book, like rethink. So take notes, rethink. Or one thing that they can do is, and this is great nowadays, like, you can just take ChatGPT out and then say, okay, how can I break this task down into smaller bits? Like, sometimes you'll know as a parent, like, what to do. And like, what you're trying to do is you're trying to give them tools to think about, okay, if I'm getting stuck, what can I do? Now, the whole point with school is that when they have homework, they're supposed to get a little bit stuck, ideally, so that they can ask the right kind of question. So if they're not very good at writing that down, say, oh, why don't you write down what questions you should ask tomorrow to try and get that done? Move on to the next thing. Don't get bogged down, and there you go. So rethink or park is a good way to do that. So sometimes just think about, what can I do to let that go? But there's lots of strategies here, and of course, them learning how to do this is literally what almost not all non-gifted kids do all day. So don't get frustrated with this. Like, particularly, I know there's a lot of gifted parents among us as well, and where some of these things goes like, this is too easy. Like I don't understand why you don't get that, or like, and it's sometimes very hard to explain to your kids like what that is. And if you're not very good at that, don't explain it. Like, don't take the sense of wonder away at all, because being able to explore and learn by themselves is actually how they really build up metacognition. So yeah, make sure that you don't steal their ability to actually learn how to do this themselves. But if they get frustrated about it, then say, oh, that's annoying. Like yeah, do you want help? Sometimes they don't want your help. Like maybe you can start something else. Read, like, there's lots of ways that you can help them grow through that emotion. Because again, fear can sometimes lead to anger. You know, to quote a famous green little fella from a galaxy far, far away. And basically, this is where you sometimes see their how they react to this kind of thing. So just know that a lot of this stuff comes from the fear, and them running into it is a good thing. It means they get used to it. And if they solve it, just say, oh, it's nice that you didn't give up. So in both those situations, and this is actually kind of interesting, like if you get really good at this, you can actually go a step back. So when they're reflecting, right? So when they're reflecting, they're already stuck, right? And essentially they're already either bored or like overcommitted. But if you can have them in this flow state, so when they're in flow, right? So are they in flow? Are they working? Are they focused? Just walking by, tapping on the shoulder, saying, "Oh, it's nice you're working so hard," is amazing. Like if you can get to that stage, it's like support that, right? So how do you support that? Like, well, be very specific about your praise, and I call this constructive praise. Why? What's the difference? Well, saying "well done" is useless, and it's also very bad at building a closed mindset, because you're focusing on the result. It's like, oh, you're sitting still, you're not shaking your leg as you normally are. You know, you're like, I've seen you work for like 30 minutes in a row. Well done. That's very constructive praise, and that's the behavior we want to see. So if you see them work, and one thing I can recommend is try to, particularly for the teens, try to create a situation where they're doing their homework in front of you, rather than like in the common area, maybe all that kind of stuff, rather than in their room locked up, because it's harder to do. But I mean, teens will be teens. There's always some challenges there. But the constructive praise is really, really, really important. And again, what we're doing here is we're helping them first with their happiness, but then we're working on being able to get into flow, and then sort of helping them attach more positive dopamine to the process of doing this work. And if they get addicted to the work itself at some point, then we have them where we are, which is called autonomous. They would start doing things all by themselves. And then you won't have to look as much anymore at this. And every once in a while, everybody will fall back. There's always things that happen. The school is designed to do this, you know, so it's not necessarily something that we can avoid. And it's okay, because we will not be able to avoid it in our actual day-to-day life either. So, but if you do those two, you're happy and autonomous, you will see success. And that is basically the core of like helping them deal with this particular part of the struggle of being gifted. And there's obviously a lot of minute details and things in there that you always have to take care of. So I'm going to give you a few tips for at home. You know, so a few home tips. So first of all, one thing that you can do is to help them redo their dopamine baseline, and I call this taking a boring break. So boring breaks. So what you can do with that is you can tell them, hey, okay, how about we come sit there at the table for a short bit, no distraction, no phone whatsoever. And we're purposely going to sit there until we're bored. Now, this doesn't take long, a couple of minutes. We give the kids sometimes a few seconds. But the idea being is we're going to present them with the choice of starting their homework or sitting in a chair, which is bored. Now, if they're bored with their homework, then this works great. If they're scared because it's too hard, then of course this doesn't work. But most of your kids are currently struggling with boredom, so this is where you can help them. So take a boring break, make them reset their baseline, and then make them go, oh, okay, you know what? I can sit here, be bored on purpose, or I can do my homework, and then it's easier to do the homework. And for you that are procrastinating from work, you can do the same for yourself. The next thing that we want to do is we actually want to create some situations where there is some calm that you can help with. And actually, one way to do that is to have a little bit of a very nice, fun, little bit of reward. Because one of the challenges with this stuff is if you want to start coaching your kids, not all of them will want to listen to you. So you need to build a little bit of rapport with them. And I know that it's hard because it's hard to find things you like. But there is a very simple tip that I really like. And what you can do is you can actually take a book as a family. So all 3, 4, 5, how many, 6, how many there are, agree on a time at night before you go to bed. Take half an hour, read a book to bed together. So reading time. And, almost every one of you has probably done this with your kids when they were 2 years old, 3 years old. It's like, this is a good thing. And how much of a bond did you have with your kids? And how many of you do this now? So you can still do this. You just don't have to read for them. They can read themselves. But the act of reading together is actually kind of fun. And then finally, like this is an important one, is basically help them with reflection. So take some time to sort of discuss like how things went. And like family time during dinner is a really good one. Like no devices at dinner, have a bit of a like a check. And if you've built enough rapport with them, they will open up to you. And I think these are the kind of tips that I have. So we have like a few more minutes left for a few more questions. So anybody hopefully can have like a nice question for me that I still have some time to answer. Open the floor. Please speak up. I would love to hear your voices.
TJ,
Yes.
I want to comment on the tips that you gave. I
Mm-hmm.
do that exactly the same, and it really works. And it really helps very much. I just wanted to tell everybody. Yeah, it works
Great.
all the time. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's like they're quite simple. And to be honest, when we do positive discipline courses, the discipline is for the mummies and daddies because keeping it going can be a bit hard sometimes. And life happens, and that's true. But if honestly, when you do this, a lot of them will ask you, "Can we go read?" It's kind of fun to see how that works. Any other questions? Because there was a long lecture, but it's an important topic. So if there's no other questions at all, that's okay. Basically, I will put this particular video on online as well for you guys, so you can download this. We'll probably edit a few ums and ahs out and stuff like that. But if there's any other questions that come up, please share them in the chat. I'll happily speak about them next week as well. So yeah, just to like quickly go through, we want to make them happy. In order to do that, we have to give them some agency, particularly when it deals with fear that they have to go through. We're trying to get them into a flow state, which means we're trying to avoid boredom to easy tasks by making them more enticing. Make them less anxious for difficult stuff by helping them reflect and reset how they work. We apply exposure therapy through projects and board games and so on. And then what we do to help is basically, well, at home, you can help them do boring breaks. You can help them with reading time together with the whole family, everyone, and reflection. One question here. Okay, when your child doesn't want to accept your help when the task is a little bit too hard for them. So when a task is too hard for them, what you need to do is you need to help them adjust them down. Now, some of them have a lot of fear and perfectionism, and in some cases, we need to build up a little bit that kind of trust, and you need that help. But one thing you can do is, if they don't want to accept the help on that thing, it's probably because they are already so much in housework mode or homework mode that they've already sort of built up cognitive dissonance against even the help that they know that they need. So what you then need to do is actually make it like, try to model making mistakes in front of them in a way that they can see that it's okay to make mistakes. Obviously, different age groups make that a little bit different. If they're very young, modeling mistakes, like, oh, oops, I made a mistake. That is silly. Like we do this even in class. We'll if we know we have kids with a lot of fear, we will write words wrong, and then we'll correct ourselves in front just on purpose. And if I do a little bit of a one-on-one with some of these kids, then what I do is I actually help them. We tell them, look, this is what we're going to do, and we have like a secret code where we're going to just have a little bit of fun. If they're really stuck and they're very young, what we can do as well is we take something that they know that they're very good at, like writing your name, and then you can just sit down with them and say, let's write the name wrong on purpose. And then basically like, we laugh it off. So maybe we'll write names in silly ways together, have a bit of fun. We have like and then you work that into, like, okay, every day we're going to try and remember something really silly that we made a mistake in, and then next week we'll tell each other. In some cases, I even help parents with like a mistake journal. But what is important is that if they are in this fear state, so they're already like struggling, and then you're going to have the discussion about, like, how can I help you? Often they're not open. So you need to have this discussion when they're not scared and when they're open to have a chat about it. And that is maybe so maybe it's not at that point the problem. What you're trying to do is the timing when you do it. I hope that answers your question, Ms. Al. As if boredom leads to misbehavior at schools, like starting to talk to people, how do we pull the string back? Ask him to write down what he wants to say instead of talk. I feel if boredom happens at school, sometimes the best way that we can help with that is actually deal with the cause problem and get school to increase the challenge. If that isn't the case, then we need to practice being bored more frequent off site to do this. If he's already struggling to really manage his emotions as a result, technically that's a step too late. Right, so it means that he's already gone to the point where he's angry, and like we can try to create more and more situations to help them manage their emotions, and that's important. But it's always better to take a little bit of a step back. And look, like, ideally, I like not fighting fires. I like stopping the people setting the fires, like on, and I think that that's probably the better way to deal with this sort of stuff. I think that is all the questions answered for today. I hope that answered your questions there. If I didn't, and I need a little bit more detail on this, please, in the actual form I send a little bit more detail, because some of these questions, whether you answer them for somebody that's 16-year-old or a 4-year-old, are quite slightly different. So there's definitely that. We keep that in mind. But with all that, I really thank you all for coming in. I am going to ask you guys for a little favor, and that is, if you guys can actually go to our Facebook page. I hope you guys had a chance to have a look at that. Just go in and give us a bit of a like, or even better, please leave a comment specifically. So we're just Passend Education on Facebook. I'll put that in the actual chat in a second as well. And yeah, just give us a nice review, or let us know what we can do to make this better. But thank you guys so much for coming in. It's great to see so many of you here. And I hope to see you guys in the schools and in our center like very soon. So have a great evening, and I'll speak to you guys next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Good night.
night.
Thank you.
Thank you.